Held down the B button for a little bit too long as that one played towards goal. Hesitates off his line, and KU finds the equalizer. 57th minute. The brief hesitation from Brendan Graves. We have ourselves a ball game again.
Hello, good evening, everyone, and welcome to Soccer in Our Area, a Cincinnati Soccer Talk podcast. I'm your host, Nathan Forsthoefel, and in this series, we'll be talking with people influential to the soccer culture in the Queen City and beyond. Tonight, I have the privilege to be joined by Ethan Herzog. How are you tonight, Ethan?
I am doing fantastic, and I still think it's very strange that I have been picked out as someone who's influential to soccer in Cincinnati, but I mean, hey, I'll take the title.
Yeah, it's I know it's a little weird to be on this side of the mic, being interviewed, but we're glad to have you in. Ethan, for those of you that don't know, has extensive experience, right? He's currently a student at the University of Cincinnati, but don't be fooled by his youth. He is quite the powerhouse in the broadcast field. He's been working with ESPN Plus, Chatterbox Sports, covering a lot of different sports, but specifically tonight, we'll be talking about a soccer experience. He is the brand new play-by-play voice of King's Hammer. It's a USL2 club and the USLW matches as well. He'll be covering those. Ethan, let's get to know you a little bit. Let's start there. Where are you from in the Cincinnati region? I hear you live in town somewhere.
So I currently live in Clifton. I'm from Finneytown. I grew up in Cincinnati. I've been living here all my life. I'm 22 now. So yes, I am a child still, but from Cincinnati, I went to Roger Bacon High School. If people are wondering what my high school affiliations are.
I was immediately going to ask you that. That's great.
Roger Bacon Spartans. Corey Kiner's about to get drafted somewhere in the NFL, so that's pretty cool. But yeah, Cincinnati native. That's about it.
Yeah. Did you get to the chance to participate in Chili Week at all this past week?
No, and I am really mad at myself that I didn't. I had thought in the back of my head, I was like, I really need to get the Skyline, or Pleasant Ridge chili is really good too. Blue Ash chili, like all of them are so good. I didn't get the chance, and I'm beating myself up about it.
Yeah. Do you have a top tier chili place for you?
I mean, I always go to Skyline. It's always Skyline, never Gold Star. But I'm trying to think. There was one in St. Bernard that closed, and I can't. It's called Chili Time, and it closed in St. Bernard. We never knew why. It's just gone, and we're like, okay, that's fine, I guess. I guess we'll never see it again. But Chili Time was that for me.
Chili Time. I feel like I've heard of this.
Yeah.
I had a few friends that were living down in the region, and I mean, I'm down there all the time. I grew up on the north side. And I always still have a sweet spot for Empress. I know Skyline is by far is the best chain, but Empress and Blue Ash for me are pretty close towards the top. Yeah, really good stuff. And great that you can get it on a deal this past week. But let's dive into some soccer. Went to Roger Bacon High School. What inspired you to explore broadcasting as a career?
Oh man, it's a story that quite honestly I love to tell because it's kind of random. I started doing broadcasting like just as a hobby because I'm a silly content creator and I love making content. I love entertaining. That's like just my whole thing. And I went to my athletic director at Roger Bacon, Steve Rossai, at one point and was like, hey, I want to do this just for fun. It's something to do. I had played football and then I stopped playing football and I was in bowling and I did theater and band. So I was like, I kind of want to do something else. And I did that for a couple of years. It was very off and on. I went to like a couple of games. My first game I ever did was soccer. I broadcasted, it was Roger Bacon and some other Dayton school, I think, came down and played us. But it didn't really kick off until COVID. COVID was really the driving force for why I got into broadcasting. And it was because I broadcasted probably over 115 events my senior year of high school, like every football game, home and away, up until the state Final Four that we made it to, every home volleyball match that was there, most home soccer matches, home for girls and boys basketball, bowling, baseball, softball, you name it, I was there. I was grinding my senior year. I was tired. I still am tired. Fun fact. But it really had to do with COVID. And I got a lot of good feedback from families and parents who were like, yeah, this is real, like this is awesome. I could see you doing this in the future if you like worked at your craft. And I was like, okay, so, you know, whatever. And I had back in my head, and then my mom, she actually found the media production program at CCM, and she sent me this link on Facebook. It was like, hey, this could be something you could do. And I looked at it and I was like, okay, I guess I'll apply. And I applied and I got in. And that I got the acceptance letter as I was calling Roger Bacon versus Purcell girls basketball. And I looked at my phone, and my mom was there too, because she liked to come and sit with me while I called games. And I looked at my mom, showed her my phone, and we were both like, you could see the shock on our faces. And there was this guy next to us. He's like, what's going on? And we're just like, leave us alone. We're celebrating right now. Leave us alone. It's my dream school.
Wow.
But pretty much it. That's, you know.
That's amazing. How did that carry on then as you went into college? What did that look like?
Oh man, I started with the student radio station at I'll call it radio station. It's more of a web streaming program.
Yeah.
Called Bearcast Media, and Sean McMahon was the director at the time, and he gave me my first college experience calling Cincinnati versus UCF football during the magical 2021 CFB run.
Wow.
I called a handful of games during that year. I went to Dallas as a fan, so I didn't get to call the game, but I was there, so that was pretty cool. But that went on, and I got to call some basketball, primarily like women's basketball. I did some soccer, not too much. I ended up doing some baseball later down the line. But the biggest part of my freshman year of college was I got to call my first game on ESPN as a freshman doing NCAA Division I women's lacrosse when Cincinnati hosted Liberty in 2022. And that, I think, was that was the springboard that kind of took me into where I want to be. And that, I wouldn't say that's what solidified me being like, yeah, this is what I want to do, because I figured that out a long time ago. But I think that was what made me realize that I can do it, because I got the trust from my professors and the staff at UC that said, okay, we can let this kid do it. I was one of the few students that ever called a game at that point. Cincinnati had never, they had never done something like that. They had a student who would do color, and she played lacrosse formerly. But to my knowledge, I was one of the first students to do play-by-play, and I was honored to be able to do that. And the rest is history, really. I mean, since then, I've called plenty of lacrosse. I've done Division I volleyball, Big 12 volleyball, Division I women's basketball, baseball. I have a baseball game tomorrow. Actually, I have when this is being recorded, Cincinnati and Toledo go at it. Fun little midweek baseball action, but I mean, it's ever growing and it doesn't stop.
Yeah.
It just keeps going. And you know that we were talking before about how you did at Ohio, or it wasn't Ohio State, or was it?
Yeah,
Ohio
I was up at Ohio
Yeah.
State. Yep, that's right. Yeah, I was on the air with them for a little while and got to know head coach Brian Masonoff for a while at Ohio State. He's having a nice little run this year in collegiate sports as well.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So that was the moment for you getting onto ESPN. That was a catalyst moment for you to really solidify your status in broadcasting. I heard a story actually from someone you know, from Kira, one of your good friends, that she introduced you to soccer and FC Cincinnati as at large. During the playoffs of 2022, during that season, that magical run that FCC went at. I was actually at that game in Red Bull Arena. It was quite the spectacle to be there. It was a shame that it wasn't full, but it was quite the spectacle to be there at that game, to see Brandon Vasquez go on a tear that entire season. And the most amazing part of this story that she told me was that you bought season tickets without even ever going to a game. You bought season tickets the following year. Can you kind of walk us through how that happened and how you committed to soccer greater as a whole?
See, I don't know why she would tell you that because it's totally true. 100% factual. That is exactly what happened because, okay, so to backtrack, my history of soccer starts, I played, I don't know, between the ages of like 5 and 11, I think. Like I played say
Okay.
soccer. Like my mom played soccer and she was like, it's fun. You should do it. And I said, okay.
Yeah.
Because I was a kid and I was like, whatever.
Yeah.
And then I
Yeah.
stepped away, played football, then eventually came back. Um, and I had actually gone to an FC Cincinnati match in like 2018 or something when they were still playing at Nippert Stadium. But I wasn't like, I was like, it's a sporting event. I wasn't super like into sports at that point. I was like, I watch the Bengals and I sometimes watch the Reds, but the Reds are whatever
Mm.
and the Bengals are also whatever. So I'm like, meh. And then obviously I got a career in sports. So I'm like, I love every sport. Every sports are fun. And we became friends because she was talking about sports and all that stuff in one of the classes that we were in. And later down the line, we were talking and we were like bonding about it. And I watched the Cincinnati versus Philly in the semifinals
Mhm.
of the I think it was the Eastern Conference.
Yeah, Eastern Conference semis. Yep.
Excuse me. But I remember like sitting and watching that game. Like I watched it full 90 and I remember like being super into it and like yelling at the TV like I would watching football. And I was like, okay, maybe I'm like kind of getting into it. And then she brought it up to me. I was like, hey, you should get season tickets. Like I know that you're into sports like I am and all this stuff. And I had never had season tickets before to anything at all. I had barely ever gone to any sporting event other than when I was working, because at the time I believe I was working for the Bengals and still am, but I was working for them. So I was like, it would be nice to be a just a fan for once. I don't do that very often anymore. So I did, and I fell in love with the Bailey. That's where we have been for 3 years now. 3 year season ticket holder. And I will be a season ticket holder until I can't anymore, which probably means that I got hired somewhere and have to either move away or I just can't have them anymore because I'm busy. But I fell in love with the Bailey. It's so fun. I learned the chants. I'm still learning some of them. I will be completely transparent. It's taken me a while, but I will sing and dance in the Bailey until the sun goes down and beyond, because I fell in love with this team. I really did. And I fell in love with the sport of soccer. She's actually also the reason why I am an FC Bayern Munich fan as well. I have a Bayern Munich kit hanging in my closet. I am going to
Yeah.
see Bayern play Auckland at TQL Stadium in July when Club World Cup comes around. So yeah, she really is the reason why I am as big of a soccer head as I am now, and kind of and again, I'll use the term springboarded me into covering soccer as much as I do, because if it wasn't for that, I mean, you saw the clip of me calling the BGSU and NKU game at the beginning of the show here. I don't think I ever would have done that. I would have stuck with football and basketball, but soccer came around, and now one of my aspirations is funny enough, is to call an Open Cup game, which is like, I feel like that's the super low bar, but I'm like, that would be so fun because it's the Open Cup. It's such a fun tournament.
Yeah, I share the sentiment. No, FCC2 will be featured in the Open Cup this year. Maybe we'll have to talk with the organizers, see what can happen, see what we can finagle.
I would hope.
Well, it'd be great. It'd be great. It does hurt my heart a little bit to hear the Bayern Munich news. I am a hardcore Dortmund fan as well. My family comes from near the area in Germany. And so, especially during COVID, I started to paying a lot more attention to them. So I'll also get to the chance to see them at TQL, which is great. But
I'm thinking about going to see a Dortmund match too, because it's soccer and I like soccer. So
it's great. It's great. And it's amazing to hear your story come from not really being involved in sports to now being a member of the Bailey, to see how it captured your attention. Like it's something that's wonderful about this club is because of its organic roots, the culture is here. This is one of the best soccer cultures in the entire country.
Oh, 100%.
And how do you think that soccer culture that we have around the first team club, how do you think that can trickle down and have an effect on the collegiate soccer teams in the city and some of our lower tier clubs as well around the region?
I mean, to what I feel like one obvious piece that I can point out. I mean, Nick Hagelin went to Xavier, and
Yeah.
Xavier rallies around that. I mean, like as much as I dislike Xavier because I'm a UC kid, but at the same time, like that's a super huge thing for for Xavier University, both for their men and their women. I mean, their women's team is incredible. They're very incredibly talented. I called what I dubbed the crosstown derby between Cincinnati
Yeah.
and Xavier earlier this
I
year.
love that.
And I mean, they are a tough team to play, so tough. And I enjoyed watching them, like I really did. And to keep answering your question is I really hope that the University of Cincinnati finds a way to get back into Division One soccer. And I know that Division One soccer at the NCAA level is weird. It's a very weird piece to the puzzle of how soccer is just existing in the ecosystem of the United States. But I feel like it would probably be a good thing, especially with the growing trend of soccer in the city of Cincinnati. And I mean, it grows up to Dayton as well, and down into northern Kentucky and everywhere else. We're just one of the unfortunate schools that doesn't have men's soccer right now. It was discontinued back in, I think it was 2020. I think it was a COVID budget cut, but I would just really hope that it brings it back. And I mean, we saw how the city rallied around almost getting an NWSL club, which I think we got snubbed for personally. But that being said, we're still fighting for it, and we're gonna get it eventually. There's no doubt in my mind that we are not going to get the bid for this club because the city's fighting, the ownership group for FC Cincinnati is fighting for it, and when that day comes, I think this city is going to explode with like just the love for the game. Like it's just an incredible piece of, like, I don't want to say real estate in the city, but like it's a very important piece to the history of the city, and it's so young. And watching what FC Cincinnati was coming up, and like I did my research on this club. Like I went back all the way back to 2015, and I like researched everything because that's just who I am. I wanted to know, and just watching it come from where it was to what it is, especially after 3 wooden spoons. I mean, who would have thought? I was my first year as a season ticket member was the run for the Shield. I witnessed that in my first year. That was incredible. And every time someone's like, "Oh, I don't know what I want to do tonight," I'm like, "Go to an FC Cincinnati game. Cheap drinks, good soccer. You can go and yell at the officials and have a good time. That's what it is." That's what I do, and I have a great time.
Yeah. How is it? What role does FCC play for you as a broadcaster? You mentioned that it's an outlet for you to be a fan. How does that tangibly manifest for you as someone who's typically on the other side of the mic?
So, it's a job, first off, which I would love to be hired on, either eventually with the team, with Apple TV, with whoever, Fox, you name it, whatever. But it also means that I know Tommy G, and he is a great guy. He's given me advice before, and we're not like super close by any stretch of the imagination. Like he knows who I am, and I know who he is, obviously, but he's someone that I look up to as a soccer broadcaster, because before I started going to games, I had no idea how to call soccer. I was very lost because I had watched soccer. I watched the World Cup and all this stuff, but I was like, oh, I'm just rooting for the United States because patriotism, whatever. But I would go back and I would watch old FC footage and analyze how Tommy G called the game, because he's a master at it. He is so talented, and I take a lot of my calls off of what he does, especially for radio, because that's how I got my start in soccer, is on the radio. And TV, you just snip off a couple words and then it's TV calling. But he's a big part of how I call games, in a similar way that like Dan Hort is for me with football and basketball. He's one of my biggest inspirations of all time. Kevin Harlan, same thing. But he may not know it, but he's helped me a lot. And same thing with Kevin McCluskey. Same thing, kind of on the analytical side of things and being able to analyze the sport of soccer. And I mean, I've done the same thing. I mean, with Bayern Munich and the Bundesliga, Derek Ray's usually all over that stuff. So I mean, and if you don't know who Derek Ray is, you need to get out of the rock that you're living under, because oh my gosh, he is amazing. Easily one of the best soccer commentators of all time. But it's a resource, to put it simply, sort of. But it's also connection. It's a way to feel closer to the club, especially knowing somebody who has been with the club since its inception. Tommy G's been there, and I've heard the story of how he got started with UC because he worked at UC, and then they were looking for somebody to call games, and they got Tommy, and the rest is history for him. So it's also me selfishly hoping that something comes along like that for me, but it's okay.
Yeah, for sure. Can you describe and maybe let our listeners know a little bit dive into that relationship more. What does your relationship with Tommy G look like? It sounds like you have a mentorship style relationship, and how you got connected, and maybe some of the key things that you've learned from him in his game.
Simply put, LinkedIn. That's how I got a lot of connections. That's how I got connected with John Sadak, for the play-by-play announcer for the Reds, and CBS. Dan Horde, I was just around all the time because he was in the press box at UC and he was in the press box with the Bengals. So I would happen upon him all the time. Tommy G wasn't the same, mainly just because it was mainly a LinkedIn kind of relationship, and he does know who I am, and he may recognize me now, but we talked many years ago. And I'll reiterate the fact that I don't think he realizes how much he really helped me in kind of crafting how I want to call these games and being able to cover soccer the way that I do, because it's not the exact same as him. I would love to kind of emulate what he does because I think it's a very good way of doing so, but I want it to be mine as well. Like, I just take little snips, and I would love to go back and pick his brain even more because he has an incredible brain. He knows soccer very well. Obviously, he's been doing it for I don't even know how long at this point, and I would love to go back to it. And I really should reach out to him again and try and get a cup of coffee and try and pick his brain, or maybe come and shadow him for a game at TQL, because I mean, he's willing to. And that's one thing about broadcasters, is that usually they're very willing to help the next generation because we're all in the same field. It's hard. This job's hard. It's rough and busy, and I am so tired. I work multiple jobs, and but long-winded statement short, it's more so I kind of take his ideas and his on-air presence and try and morph it into something that makes sense for me, and take his knowledge that I can grab out off the airwaves and then kind of put it into my style, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, that makes a lot of sense. And say imitation is the most is a high form of flattery, right? So it's good. Yeah, learn from those things and from those qualities, and that's great. Speaking of learning, and as you've grown through your career, I wanted to dive a little bit into some of what your previous match day experience, especially at the collegiate level and the Dayton Dutch Lions. I know that you were recently announced as the play-by-play broadcaster for King's Hammer. I know we mentioned that at the top of the show. Again, that's USL2 and W matches. Can you share with our listeners, how you got connected with King's Hammer, and also what some of your previous match day experience looks like with NKU and with UC, and dive a little bit in what a day in the life of that might look like?
Yeah, so first off, getting the King's Hammer job, I knew Tyler Stroud, who was the PA announcer for King's Hammer when they were at Scudamore Field at NKU. And he and I reached out and was like, hey, I know you work for King's Hammer, and we're good friends. He does PA announcing all over the city. Very good guy. Love him to death. And I reached out to him. I was like, hey, do you know like who I could reach out to try and get some work? And he was like, yeah. And he gave me a contact for I can't remember his actual position, but someone's in charge. I'll just say that. And sent an email, and I got one back, and nothing kind of came of it initially. And then funnily enough, a career day came up at the University of Cincinnati, and they were there. They were there. I met them. We talked, and we sent them an email, and then again, nothing kind of came of it. But then I got in touch with Dayton Dutch Lions, and because I literally just reached out to a bunch of places, different USL2 clubs and minor league baseball teams and all this stuff, and Dayton got back to me first. And fun fact, actually, Kira's sister played for Dayton Dutch Lions way back when. So I had some weird connection, and then her dad was the coach and this whole thing and whatever. So I knew people that could get me the job. And then I got the job, and I was like, oh, sweet. And later down the line, King's Hammer came to me with a better offer and then they got back to me, gave me a better offer, and I took that offer. So now I'm with King's Hammer because I will follow the money, of course, but it's also a proximity thing because King's Hammer is significantly closer to me than Dayton is. And I love Dayton for, being there and being one of my first positions in kind of a media relations director spot. But I now get to do it for King's Hammer and do it for my city, which I have a lot of pride in the city. I really do. But in terms of a typical match day, I'll give you a match week. How about that? So
perfect.
And this kind of goes into how my preparation goes as a play-by-play announcer. It's a lot of sitting down and staring at a computer screen because I am looking at notes, and I am looking for different stats and storylines to follow for the players. I make these giant spot boards with every player on the roster, and they have tidbits and stats, and it has the team's record and the team stats and the team's schedule, and it has all this other stuff, and it's color coded. It's all super fancy and weird. I don't have one in front of me, or else I'd hold it up for the camera to show you, but it's a lot of that, and it takes me a long time. It's multiple hours a day and 7 days a week preparing for every show that I do. And it'll also go into like talking with players, coaches. I'll call the coaches and be like, hey, what's up? Like, get some information on the team, how they've been doing. If there's any injuries that I should know about, if there's any game time scratches that I should know about, things like that. Sometimes I will take photos on the side, and I'll go and shoot a little bit. I would do that for Dayton Dutch Lions games all the time. I would shoot my own promotional content. I'd go down pre-match and shoot some photos, throw it in the Photoshop, edit it really quick, throw some text over it, post it on social media. That was my graphic for the show. That's how people knew that there was a broadcast for that night. But it's a lot of that. And then in terms of just like kind of NKU kind of stuff, like that's a lot of just the freelancing kind of things. So Tyler Stroud was actually the guy who got me that one gig. He said to me that they were looking for a guy because their normal guy couldn't do it. So reached out to me, and I got the job, and I went down and I did all the same stuff that I would do and did a research. And that one more so involves meeting with the directors and the whole team, trying to figure out the show. And then, you're on air, you're playing ball, you're going to call 90 minutes of soccer and, and enjoy the sport.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it is a lucky timing for you with being a UC student that they moved King's Hammer's home stadium too from the campus of your rival Xavier down to Northern Kentucky.
Yeah, I will say, if it was still at Xavier, I'd be all right with it because it's only like a 3-mile drive. Like it would take me all of 10 minutes to get there. So I would have been like, it's fine. Also, sidebar, Xavier Stadium is actually pretty cool. I will say, like, it's this like kind of I won't say it's a pit, but like it's
Mhm.
in the ground, and it's
Yeah, it's
got this
dug in.
really cool like slope that you can sit on. It's all grass seating. I think it's really cool. I like it.
Yeah,
That's just
no,
me.
it is a cool stadium. Remember, that is being recorded. We have a,
Oh, I
UC
know, I know. I
UC
recorded another
student that's
podcast
very
earlier
public.
today, and I talked good about Xavier already. So I'm
Yeah.
expecting tweets and whatever. It's fine.
We know that he can be unbiased. That's absolutely
And
fantastic.
that's the most important part of. That's the most important thing that I've tried to do for myself is to be unbiased, and I think I've done a good job. So that's all I'm gonna say about that one.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. I wanted to talk a little bit more into as well. FC Cincinnati has some key NIL deals too with UC students. Funny enough, off the top of my head, I can't think of any soccer players on UC's team that is involved with their NIL deal, but hopefully they'll have D1 here in the future where they'll be a part of it. Also, recently there was some rumors I know floating around the interwebs that a possible chance for college students to play in USL1 leagues. So I wanted to ask, I know you're involved with Dayton Dutch Lions, and now with King's Hammer and with the collegiate game. What role do you see for these lower level clubs and teams for the development of players here in the United States and the growth of the game here in our region?
That's a loaded question.
Yeah, yeah, there's a lot there.
Man, oh, just stumped me. Dang. Um, I I mean, I'm a big proponent of the USL, and you could ask my good friend Aiden Riggs, he's from Louisville. He's a big Lou City fan, which I'm
Mm.
sure FC Cincinnati fans are going to hate me saying. But I think that the USL and their track is very important to what soccer is in the United States, if not in Cincinnati. And we have plenty of USL2 and USLW, USL Academy teams, and we have Kings Hammer, obviously, which is one of the most prestigious ones in the country. And then you have down south in Louisville, you have Lou City, and used to have FC Cincinnati, but they got the MLS bid, and things like that. But just finding a way to get into it. And I think that if there was a way for the USL clubs to partner with universities, I don't want to say like a draft because that seems too, I'm going to say American sport like, which the MLS has. They have the super draft and, players come and go out of it and all that stuff. But something where the clubs can partner with the university. Like if King's Hammer were to pick up some kind of partnership with the University of Cincinnati, especially because they don't have a Division 1 men's soccer team, but they have a club team, technically speaking. So they could find some way to do that. But it's tough. Because I think that the whole draft process is a little, I don't want to say dumb in to put it in very simple terms, but I think it's a different approach to it, I think is the right way to say it. But it's really just a matter of finding ways to get kids to be interested in playing soccer in America, because obviously everyone's goal is to go play in Europe. That's kind of the whole thing. They want to go play in the Premier League, the Bundesliga, in Liga MX. Like they want to go play elsewhere. They don't want to play in the United States because in the United States, the more popular sports, baseball, football, basketball, and hockey, because that's making its, I don't want to say resurgence, but it's exploding as well. And if the United States can somehow find a way to make soccer as popular as it is in Europe, I think that will bode. Obviously, it's going to bode very well for what the USL wants to do and trying to figure out how to get the college kids to then go to the USL, because right now the college pipeline is MLS because it's the draft. That it's like the NFL, the MLB, the NBA. You go from college to the majors, and that's that. But I think that kind of leaves the USL teams not trying to find players because there's plenty of players. I mean, we see all the time plenty of players who double dip. They'll play college ball and then they'll go and play prep ball. And sometimes they'll go and play prep ball all the way through, and other times they'll stick with college, and other times they'll just give it up entirely. But I think it just comes down to how a partnership can come down with USL and the college and division, maybe not even just Division 1, but you all the way to Division 2, Division 3, JUCO, NAIA, NJCAA, like every league, because there are players in every league of college ball that are incredibly talented players. It doesn't matter if you play D1 or not. And I think that might also be sort of the stigma of not just soccer, but sports in general is, oh, you don't play Division 1 ball, you must not be as good. But some of the best players come out of the JUCO ranks, and you just never know. Like, you could find a complete steal out of Cumberland University in Southern Kentucky, and they'll blow you away on the pitch and be the Golden Boot winner and win the MVP, and then they'll go and play in Europe. And you'll never know until you try.
Yeah. And there are great stories all throughout the entire pyramid here in the U.S. I think we love an underdog. I think that's why there are so many people that cling hard under the Open Cup. I know you're a big fan of
Yes.
the U.S. Open
Yes.
Cup. Build your ideal soccer system. Like, how would you have the system work here in our pyramid, and especially as it's related to our local clubs?
I would love ProRel. First and foremost,
Wow.
give me ProRel.
All right.
Like, I know that
just going for it.
I know that it wouldn't work in how American soccer exists, because no owner is going to want to go from top tier to the bottom because they keep losing. They paid billions of dollars. And this is also something that I've had a discussion with multiple people, because I was like, oh yeah, they should really do it. And I took for granted the fact that billionaires exist and own clubs and stuff here in America.
Yeah.
But my biggest one is ProRel. 100%. I think it just adds a whole dynamic, because then you're taking small teams that, like, just for the hypotheticals, just everyone's on an even playing field. You're having the Louisville Cardinals that play in, I don't know what their stadium capacity is, but just for hypothetical, 1,000-seat stadium, whatever. And then they host FC Cincinnati, who's used to playing in a 25,000-seat stadium, because they're both in the same league and they have to play a home and home. And it would be great. And it's just, it adds a dynamic to how soccer exists and the love of the game, because you have a giant group of supporters who are going to pack that stadium in no matter how big or how small. And it adds, the entertainment factor to it too. You're hosting this, you're like, oh, we're going to host this big little team, let's pull the upset. And then they do. And then you end up getting money and more money, and then investing, and then building better stadiums. And then you have lots of stadiums that are homes to clubs that are very successful, and every club is super successful. And then the dynamics keep shifting. So you see new clubs almost every year. The league's never the same. You get so much variety that you never get bored in that kind of ecosystem, where teams are coming and going as the records fluctuate, but they're never out of the league. It's the same league. It's just different tiers of said league. And you can get back up to where you want to be, and then you can get back down to where you don't want to be. So then you try harder to get back to where you want to be.
Yeah. Where do you see the collegiate game fitting into that structure?
Oh man. God, all the loaded questions today.
Yeah.
I almost feel like USL, like, to kind of put them into into a league of its own, or not its own, but combine it with a league. NCAA division, like NCAA top to bottom, meshes the best with USL2. That's the same kind of thing, I feel like. Like and I know it's happened before that some college teams will play USL club teams. I mean, University of Cincinnati did it back in 2016. They hosted FC Cincinnati and they played. They lost, but they played them. They did it, and they also hosted Dayton Dutch Lions. I think they lost that one too, but they still did it. And I think that's just where a lot of the same talent lies. Is you see typically USL2 players and things and kids of that nature are typically college kids or right out of college. So it's about the same, about the same age, about the same fitness. They're going at it at the same almost time in their lives. So they're there. And then you look at it that, the best are going to go on and the rest of them might stay, and then they'll keep working at it, get up to being their best, and then they'll keep going up, or they may retire, which happens. And, but I think that's kind of where the NCAA and all the following leagues of college ball kind of are in that kind of USL 2-ish range, maybe USL right above that, which for the life of me right now, I'm blanking on what's right above it. I think it's 1. But
USL 2, USL 1. Yeah.
Yeah, obviously, because 1, 2. But
yeah. And then
I think that's kind of where they
would.
I think that's kind of where they would lie. But
Yeah. No, totally. A couple last questions quick before I know we got to wrap up here. Do you use I know we're soccer is kind of a interesting sport in the US where we have a lot of European influence and South American influence. Do you use European terms when you're doing this broadcast? Do you go with the field versus the pitch? Do you go with the touch line versus I don't know what is your approach towards blending that?
I try my best to use the European terms.
Okay.
Because I feel, I don't know what it is. I just feel like it's more proper.
Yeah.
And I say that I love calling it the pitch. I love, and then I'll try and do touch line and those in some of those terms I also use interchangeably in other sports too. Like cleats. I call shoes and all of that boots all the time. It doesn't matter if it's basketball or football or lacrosse or baseball. It doesn't really matter. I just do it just because I'm not thinking and I say it. Because I'm looking for a synonym because I already said shoes or I already said cleats, so I'm gonna say something else. So I say boots. But I try my best to do kind of the European style, and I think it kind of goes to a lot of the soccer that I ended up watching, especially on Apple TV. I mean, they have a lot of guys that are from overseas, so they use that terminology, and a lot of the guys on Apple TV anyway use that terminology. There aren't many of those who use the American terminology for soccer. They don't really use field or anything. They always use pitch, touch line, and things of the like.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Ethan, here for joining us tonight. Just wanted to get your few final thoughts. We're recording this on a Monday evening, right before our main show's going out. So we still don't know the final score of the CONCACAF Champions Cup, a game that will take place tomorrow night against Tigres. Do you have a final score for us, Ethan?
Oh boy.
Tigres just lost their head coach. They just released
I know that's why my decision is so hard, because they did just lose their head coach. I want to say 2-1 FC.
2-1 FC.
I think so. I think Evander and Denke are going to figure it out, and I think
fantastic.
Fingers crossed. Obviously, I really hope that's the result, but time will tell.
Great. 2-1 FC Cincinnati. Glad to hear it. Ethan, tell us where we can find you online.
Oh man, X, formerly known as Twitter, Herzog _sports. That's pretty much my handle everywhere. My podcast that I alluded to earlier, the Sin City Sportscast with a couple of my buddies, just got posted on YouTube. I think that's it. If you want to search my name up on LinkedIn, it's Ethan Herzog. I'll connect with you on LinkedIn if you really want, but it's Twitter's where all of my things are. So probably
great. Wonderful. Thank you so much, Ethan. That's a wrap for tonight. Make sure to follow Cincinnati Soccer Talk on social media or subscribe to us on Patreon. I'm Nathan Forsthoefel, and this has been Soccer in Our Area.